They bought a desert motel for $3. By the third night, 6 guests had checked in. By morning, only 3 remained. The others had vanished without a trace, leaving behind packed luggage, running cars, and rooms that looked like they'd been abandoned mid-conversation. And the worst part? The motel's previous owner had left a single note taped to the office desk: "Don't ask questions. Don't look for answers. Just sell it and leave. Normal world disrupted, 0:30 to 3:30. Cassandra Bellamy had been running on fumes for months. After her bakery in Tucson collapsed under mounting debt and a failed business partnership, she'd sold everything she owned just to cover what she owed. At 42 years old, she found herself starting over with a battered Jeep, $2,300 in savings, and her daughter, 17-year-old Riley, who hadn't spoken more than necessary since they'd left Arizona. Riley sat in the passenger seat, earbuds in, staring out at the endless stretch of Nevada highway. The silence between them had become comfortable in its discomfort. Cass had stopped trying to force conversation weeks ago. The listing had appeared on a Tuesday evening while Cass scrolled through her phone in a truck stop parking lot: Starlight Motor Lodge, Route 93, Mineral County, Nevada. As is sale. $3. $3 for an entire motel. Cass had laughed at first. It had to be a typo, a scam, or worse. But desperation makes people consider things they'd normally dismiss. She called the number. A woman answered, her voice clipped and professional, almost robotic. "The price is correct. $3. Cash only. Property sold as is. No inspections. No negotiations." "What's wrong with it?" Cass had asked. A pause. "Nothing structural. It's complicated. Can you be there Friday at noon?" Cass looked at Riley, then at the dwindling numbers in her bank account. Yes. They drove out 3 days later. 5.5 hours northwest of Tucson, deep into the Mojave Desert, where the land flattened into an endless expanse of beige and brown. The highway cut through it like a scar, shimmering with heat mirages. The Starlight Motor Lodge appeared like a mirage itself. A single-story structure painted in faded coral and turquoise, the kind of roadside motel that had been popular in the 1950s and forgotten by the 1980s. 15 rooms arranged in a horseshoe shape around a courtyard with a dried-up fountain in the center. A rusted neon sign towered over the entrance, half the letters dark, reading "St. Light OTLDGE." Cass pulled into the gravel parking lot, gravel crunching under the tires. Riley pulled out her earbuds and stared. "This is it?" Riley asked, her voice flat. "Apparently." A silver sedan sat near the office entrance. As they parked, a woman emerged from the office, mid-30s, wearing a gray pantsuit despite the 100-degree heat. She carried a leather folder and wore sunglasses that covered half her face. "Ms. Bellamy?" the woman asked. "That's me." The woman extended a hand. "Vivian Marks. I'm handling the sale on behalf of the estate." Her handshake was brief, cold, impersonal. "Whose estate?" Cass asked. Vivian's expression didn't change. "The previous owner. Everything's in order. I just need your signature and payment." Cass looked around. The motel was desolate, surrounded by nothing but desert and distant mountains. The nearest town, according to her GPS, was 18 miles south. "Can I see inside first?" "Of course." Vivian produced a keyring with 15 identical brass keys. She unlocked the office door and stepped inside. The office was small, cramped, with wood-paneled walls and a low popcorn ceiling. A desk sat against the back wall, covered in dust. Behind it, a pegboard held room keys. A registry book lay open, its pages yellowed and blank. The air smelled stale, like the place had been sealed shut for years. On the desk, taped to the surface with masking tape, was a handwritten note on lined paper. "Don't ask questions. Don't look for answers. Just sell it and leave." Cass stared at it. "What is this?" Vivian glanced at the note as if seeing it for the first time. "I couldn't say." The previous owner left several unusual items. I'd recommend disposing of anything you don't need. Who was the previous owner? Vivian opened the folder and pulled out a single-page document. The property deed will transfer to you upon payment. The previous owner's identity is protected under privacy clauses in the estate settlement. You'll own the property outright. No liens. No mortgages. Clear title. Riley wandered into the office, looking around with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. Why would anyone sell a motel for $3? Vivian didn't look at her. That's not my concern. I'm simply executing the terms of the sale. Cass felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Everything about this felt wrong. But she thought about the 17 nights they'd spent sleeping in the Jeep, the way Riley had stopped talking about college, the way her own hands shook every time she checked her bank balance. $3 for a roof over their heads. $3 for a chance to rebuild. She pulled 3 crumpled $1 bills from her wallet and set them on the desk. Vivian counted them, slid them into the folder, and handed Cass a pen. Sign here, here, and here. Cass signed. Her hand trembled slightly, but she finished. Vivian handed her the keys. The property is yours. Good luck, Ms. Bellamy. She walked out, got into her sedan, and drove away without another word. Cass and Riley stood in the empty office, the desert wind whistling through cracks in the walls. Riley picked up the note from the desk and read it aloud. Don't ask questions. Don't look for answers. Just sell it and leave. She looked at her mother. This is insane. Cass took the note and crumpled it, shoving it into her pocket. It's ours now. We'll make it work. But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. Descend into mystery, 3:30 to 6:30. The first day was brutal. Cass and Riley cleaned the office, swept out rooms, and tried to assess what needed fixing. Most of the rooms were in surprisingly good condition, dusty and outdated, but structurally sound. Beds with floral bedspreads. Avocado green bathrooms. Rotary phones that didn't work. It was like stepping into a time capsule. Room 7 was different. When Cass unlocked the door, the smell hit her first. Not decay, but something chemical, like bleach mixed with something metallic. The room was spotless. Too spotless. The bed was made with military precision. The bathroom gleamed. But the mirror above the sink was shattered, spiderweb cracks radiating from a central impact point. Riley stood in the doorway. What happened here? Cass touched the mirror, careful not to cut herself. I don't know. She backed out and locked the door. They didn't go into room 7 again. By the second day, they had power restored, water running, and the neon sign partially repaired. It now read Starlight Motel in flickering blue and pink. Cass posted photos online, listed the motel on travel sites, and prayed someone would stop. On the third day, guests started arriving. The first was a man in his 50s, heavy-set, wearing a trucker's cap and a stained denim jacket. He pulled up in a semi-truck just after noon, parked in the far corner of the lot, and walked to the office. Got a room? He asked. His voice was rough, like gravel scraped over concrete. We do, Cass said, forcing a smile. How many nights? Just one. He pulled out a wad of cash and peeled off 2 20s. Room at the end. Away from the road. She gave him the key to room 14. He took it without a word and walked away. An hour later, a woman arrived in a dusty Honda Civic. She was in her 30s, thin, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous energy that made Cass uneasy. Do you have a room available? The woman asked, glancing over her shoulder toward the highway. Yes. How long will you be staying? I don't know yet. Maybe a few days. She paid cash for 3 nights up front and took the key to room 11. By late afternoon, 4 more guests had checked in. A young man with a backpack and a haunted look in his eyes. An older couple who didn't speak to each other. A woman in a business suit who looked completely out of place. All of them paid cash. All of them requested rooms on the far side of the motel. And all of them had the same look, tired, weary, like they were running from something. That evening, Cass stood in the office and counted the cash. $460. More money than she'd seen in weeks. Riley sat on the counter, scrolling through her phone. This place is creepy. It's business, Cass said. We need this. They're all weird, Mom. None of them would even look at me. Cass looked out the window at the line of occupied rooms. Lights flickered behind curtains. Shadows moved. She felt it too, that wrongness, but she couldn't afford to acknowledge it. They're just travelers, she said. People passing through. But even as she said it, she noticed something strange. None of the guests had checked in with license plates from nearby states. The semi-truck had plates from Maine. The Honda from Florida. The young man's car, a beat-up sedan, had Texas plates. Why would any of them be here, in the middle of nowhere, at a motel that wasn't even listed properly online yet? That night, Cass lay awake in the small apartment behind the office. The walls were thin. She could hear the hum of the highway, the occasional creak of the motel settling, and something else. Voices. Faint, muffled, like people talking outside. She sat up, walked to the window, and looked out at the courtyard. Empty. The fountain sat dry and silent. The rooms were dark except for a few with lights still on. But the voices continued. She opened the door and stepped outside. The desert air was cold, biting against her skin. She walked toward the courtyard, listening. The voices seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. She couldn't make out words, just the rhythm of conversation, rising and falling. Then they stopped. Silence. Cass stood alone in the dark, her breath visible in the cold air. She turned to go back inside. That's when she saw the figure. Standing at the edge of the parking lot, just beyond the reach of the motel's lights. A silhouette. Tall. Motionless. Cass froze. Hello? No response. The figure didn't move. Just stood there, watching. Cass backed toward the office, her heart pounding. She reached the door, fumbled with the handle, and slipped inside. She locked the door and stood in the dark, watching through the window. The figure was gone. The threat materializes, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Cass didn't sleep. She sat in the office chair, watching the parking lot, jumping at every sound. When dawn finally broke, pale and cold, she felt like she'd aged 10 years. Riley emerged from the apartment, rubbing her eyes. Did you sleep at all? No. You look terrible. Cass ignored her and walked outside. The morning air was crisp. She did a walk around the property, checking each room from the outside. Everything looked normal. Cars in the lot. Curtains drawn. Quiet. She reached room 11, the nervous woman's room. The door was slightly ajar. Cass's stomach dropped. She pushed the door open. The room was empty. The bed unmade. Suitcase open on the floor, clothes spilling out. The bathroom light was on, shower still dripping. But the woman was gone. Cass stepped inside, her hands shaking. Hello? No answer. She checked the closet, the bathroom, under the bed. Nothing. She ran to room 14, the trucker's room. The door was locked. She knocked. Sir? Are you in there? No response. She used her master key and opened the door. Empty. His duffel bag sat on the bed. His keys were on the nightstand. But he was gone. Panic clawed at her chest. She ran from room to room, knocking, calling out. The young man's room, empty. The businesswoman's room, empty. The older couple's room, empty. Only 2 guests remained. A man in room 8 answered his door, looking pale and terrified. What's happening? He asked, his voice shaking. I don't know, Cass said. Did you hear anything last night? He stared at her. I heard voices. Out in the desert. Around 2 a.m. I looked out the window, and I saw people walking. A line of them. Just walking into the desert. Cass felt the blood drain from her face. Walking where? I don't know. They just disappeared into the dark. By noon, the remaining guests had checked out, throwing cash at Cass and fleeing without explanation. Cass and Riley stood in the empty parking lot, staring at the abandoned cars. 4 vehicles. Keys still inside. Luggage still in the rooms. Riley's voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, what is this place?" Cass pulled the crumpled note from her pocket and read it again. "Don't ask questions. Don't look for answers. Just sell it and leave." But it was too late for that. Because that night, as the sun set over the Mojave, Cass stood at the office window and saw them again. Figures in the distance. Walking slowly toward the motel. 1, 2, 5, 10. A line of shadows moving across the desert floor. And this time, they didn't disappear. Cass didn't take her eyes off the figures. They moved with an unnatural slowness, gliding across the sand like they were walking through water. Riley stood beside her, gripping her mother's arms so tightly it hurt. "Mom, we need to leave. Right now." But Cass couldn't move. Something about the way the figures walked, the deliberate nature of their approach, told her running wouldn't help. They weren't chasing. They were coming. There was a difference. She locked the office door, pulled Riley into the back apartment, and grabbed the only weapon she had, a tire iron from the Jeep. They sat in the dark, backs against the wall, listening. Footsteps. Dozens of them. Crunching across gravel. Then voices. Whispering. Not English. Not any language Cass recognized. Just sounds that felt wrong, like words played backward or stretched too thin. The footsteps stopped outside the office door. Silence. Cass held her breath, gripping the tire iron with white knuckles. Riley pressed against her, trembling. Then, just as suddenly as they'd arrived, the footsteps retreated. Fading. Growing distant. Until there was nothing but the wind and the hum of the highway. Cass waited until dawn before she dared to move. Dawn and the search, 1:30 to 3:30. The parking lot looked the same as it had the night before. 4 abandoned cars. Empty rooms. No sign of the figures. But something had changed. Cass walked slowly across the gravel, tire iron still in hand. The air felt different. Heavy. Like the pressure before a storm. She approached room 11, the nervous woman's room, and stopped. The door was closed now. She was certain she'd left it open. She pushed it open slowly. The room was exactly as she'd left it the day before. Unmade bed. Open suitcase. Dripping shower. Except now, written on the bathroom mirror in what looked like condensation, were 3 words. "They're still here." Cass stumbled backward, her heart hammering. She ran to the next room. Room 14. The trucker's room. On the wall above the bed, scratched into the paint with something sharp. "Don't let them in." Room by room, she found them. Messages. Warnings. Scratched into walls, written on mirrors, carved into wooden headboards. The voices lie. Basement. 1974. She knows. Riley found Cass in room 6, staring at a message carved into the bathroom door. "Check the foundation." "Mom, what does this mean?" Cass's mind raced. The basement. She hadn't seen a basement. The motel was single-story, built directly on a concrete slab. There was no basement. Unless there was. Hidden Truth revealed, 3:30 to 6 o'clock. They searched the office first. Cass pulled open drawers, rifled through old filing cabinets, looking for blueprints, documents, anything that might explain the property's history. Riley found it. Tucked beneath the false bottom of a desk drawer, a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. It was a property survey from 1974. The Starlight Motor Lodge. But the diagram showed something that didn't exist now, a structure beneath the office marked Storage Restricted Access. There, Riley said, pointing to a note scrawled in the margin, sealed by county order. Do not excavate. Cass studied the diagram. If the survey was accurate, the entrance should be in the office supply closet. They moved to the small closet at the back of the office. Cleaning supplies. Mops. A broken vacuum. Cass pulled everything out, examining the walls, the floor. Riley knocked on the back wall. It sounded hollow. Cass pressed her hands against the paneling. It shifted slightly. She wedged her fingers into a seam and pulled. The panel came away, revealing a narrow doorway behind it. And beyond that, stairs. Descending into darkness. Cass grabbed a flashlight from the desk. Riley gripped her arm. Mom, we shouldn't. We need to know what's down there. The stairs were steep, wooden, creaking under their weight. The air grew colder with each step. Cass swept the flashlight beam ahead, illuminating rough concrete walls. At the bottom was a small room, maybe 12 feet square. The walls were lined with filing cabinets. In the center of the room sat a metal desk, and on that desk was a journal. Cass opened it. The handwriting was shaky, frantic. June 14, 1974. They came again last night. 17 of them this time. I tried to turn them away, but they don't listen. They just stand there, staring, until I let them in. And once they're in the rooms, they disappear. Not leave, disappear. By morning, the rooms are empty, but their things are still there. Their cars. Their lives. Just, abandoned. June 22, 1974. I found out what they are. They're not people. Not anymore. Something in the desert draws them here. Something old. Something that was here long before the motel. The Paiute elders tried to warn me when I bought this land. They said it was cursed. A threshold, they called it. A place where the living pass into something else. I didn't believe them. God forgive me, I didn't believe. July 3, 1974. I tried to seal it. Poured concrete over the site behind room 7. But it didn't stop. It only made them angry. Now they come every night. More of them. And they're not just passing through anymore. They're looking for something. Or someone. July 9, 1974. I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. I'm going to sell this place and never come back. But I can't sell it to someone who doesn't know. I can't let someone else suffer what I've suffered. So I'm leaving a note. A warning. Don't ask questions. Don't look for answers. Just sell it and leave. Because if you stay too long, they'll come for you too. The entry ended there. Cass felt sick. She flipped through the rest of the journal. Page after page of names. Dates. Descriptions of people who'd checked in and never checked out. Hundreds of them. Over decades. Riley's voice was barely a whisper. Mom, we need to leave. Right now. But before Cass could respond, they heard it. Footsteps. Above them. In the office. Heavy. Deliberate. Someone was inside. First major confrontation, 6 to 8:30. Cass grabbed Riley's hand and they crept up the stairs. The office was dark, the only light coming from the flickering neon sign outside. A figure stood in the center of the room. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Wearing a long coat despite the heat. Ms. Bellamy, the figure said. A man's voice. Calm. Almost friendly. Cass raised the tire iron. Who are you? The man stepped into the light. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had seen too much. His eyes were pale, almost colorless. "My name is Samuel Crane. I'm the one who arranged the sale of this property." "You mean you're the one who tricked us into buying a cursed motel for $3, Cass said, her voice shaking with anger. Samuel didn't flinch. "I didn't trick you. I offered you a choice. You chose to accept." "A choice? You didn't tell us people disappear here. Would you have believed me if I had?" He tilted his head. "Besides, you needed this place. I saw your bank statements. Your debts. You were desperate. I gave you an opportunity." Riley stepped forward. "An opportunity to die?" Samuel's expression softened, but there was no warmth in it. "Not to die. To serve a purpose. This place needs someone to manage it. To keep it running. The previous owners understood that. They lasted 30 years before they couldn't take it anymore. I'm hoping you'll do better." Cass felt rage boiling inside her. "You want us to just, what? Let people disappear? Pretend we don't notice? They're already gone, Ms. Bellamy. The people who come here aren't victims. They're drawn here because they're already between worlds. Dying. Broken. Lost. This place is where they transition. And someone needs to be here to witness it. To keep the threshold open." "That's insane," Riley said. Samuel looked at her. "Is it? You've seen them. You've heard the voices. You know this place is real. The question isn't whether you believe it. The question is what you're going to do about it." Cass gripped the tire iron tighter. "We're leaving." Samuel shook his head slowly. "You can't. Not anymore. You signed the deed. You accepted the property. And with it, the responsibility. If you leave, the threshold closes. And when it closes, everything that's been held back for 50 years will come flooding through. Not just here. Everywhere. Every town within 100 miles will become a graveyard." "You're lying," Cass said, but her voice wavered. Samuel reached into his coat and pulled out a photograph. He set it on the desk. This was taken in 1982. The last time someone abandoned the motel. Cass looked at the photo. It showed a small town, buildings collapsed, streets empty, bodies lying in the dust. 23 people died in 6 hours, Samuel said quietly. Heart attacks. Strokes. Accidents. All at once. Because the threshold wasn't maintained. Riley's face was pale. "So we're supposed to just stay here? Forever?" "Not forever. Just until you can find someone to replace you. Just like I found you." The accident and true stakes, 8:30 to 10:30. Cass felt the walls closing in. Every option was impossible. Stay and watch people disappear. Leave and cause a massacre. There had to be another way. "What if we destroy it?" she said suddenly. "Burn the motel down. Tear it apart. Remove the threshold." Samuel's expression darkened. "You can't destroy it. Others have tried. It only makes things worse. I don't believe you." Before Samuel could respond, the lights went out. The entire motel plunged into darkness. Then the voices started. Louder than before. Dozens of them. Screaming. Crying. Begging. Riley grabbed Cass's arm. "Mom." The office door burst open. Figures poured in. Not walking. Crawling. Dragging themselves across the floor. Their faces were wrong. Twisted. Eyes too wide. Mouths open in silent screams. Cass swung the tire iron. It passed through the first figure like smoke. They weren't solid. Weren't real. But they felt real. Samuel backed toward the wall. "I told you. You can't fight them. You can only accept them." One of the figures reached for Riley. Cass threw herself between them, screaming. Get away from her. The figure stopped, tilted its head, and spoke. Help us. The voice was layered. Multiple voices speaking as one. We're trapped. Between. Can't move forward. Can't go back. We need the keeper. We need someone to guide us. Cass's breath caught. Guide you where? Through. Samuel stepped forward, his voice urgent. That's what the keeper does. You don't just watch them disappear. You help them cross. You open the way. Without you, they're stuck. In pain. Forever. Cass looked at the figures surrounding them. Dozens of them. Men. Women. Children. All lost. All suffering. If I do this, she said slowly, they'll be at peace? Yes. And if I don't? Samuel gestured to the figures. This. Forever. For them. And eventually, for you. The choice, 10:30 to 12 o'clock. Cass looked at Riley. Her daughter's face was streaked with tears, but there was something else in her eyes. Understanding. We can't leave them like this, Riley whispered. Cass closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to run. To take Riley and drive until they couldn't drive anymore. But she thought about the journal. The previous owner who'd tried to run. The people who'd died because he'd abandoned his responsibility. She thought about the figures surrounding her. Lost souls who just wanted peace. She opened her eyes. Tell me what to do. Samuel nodded. Go to room 7. Behind the shattered mirror. There's a door. Open it. And when they come, let them through. Cass took Riley's hand and they walked through the motel. The figures followed, a silent procession. Room 7. The door swung open. The mirror was still shattered. Cass approached it and pressed her hand against the glass. It gave way like water. Behind it was light. Pure, white, endless. The figures began to move forward. One by one, they stepped through the mirror. And as they did, their faces changed. The pain left them. They smiled. It took hours. By the time the last figure stepped through, the sun was rising. Cass and Riley stood in the empty room, exhausted. Samuel appeared in the doorway. You did well. How long do we have to do this? Cass asked. As long as it takes to find someone else. Could be months. Could be years. And if we can't find anyone? Samuel's smile was sad. Then you'll understand why I had to find you. He walked away, disappearing into the morning light. Act 3, Resolution, 12 to 1500 hours. New normal, 12 to 1400 hours. Weeks passed. The motel became routine. Guests checked in. Most were normal travelers. But some weren't. Cass learned to recognize them. The ones who were between. The ones who needed guidance. She and Riley opened the mirror for them. Helped them cross. It was exhausting. Painful. But also, strangely, purposeful. Riley started talking again. Not just short answers, but real conversations. She researched the threshold, found old texts, learned the history. Cass rebuilt the motel properly. Made it welcoming. A place of peace for those who needed it. One night, a woman arrived. Middle-aged. Tired. She looked at Cass with knowing eyes. I've been looking for this place, she said. Cass studied her. Why? Because I'm ready to take over. Resolution and freedom, 14 to 1500 hours. 6 months later, Cass and Riley packed the Jeep. The woman, whose name was Margaret, stood in the office doorway. Thank you, Margaret said. Cass handed her the keys. You're sure about this? I am. I've been lost for a long time. This gives me purpose. Cass and Riley drove away from the Starlight Motor Lodge. In the rearview mirror, the neon sign flickered. "Where are we going?" Riley asked. Cass smiled. For the first time in months, she felt free. "Anywhere we want." The desert stretched endlessly ahead. And for once, it felt like hope instead of emptiness. Behind them, the motel stood as it always had. A threshold. A passage. And someone to keep it open.